The Galactic Council's Grand Summit was always a place where history was made. Today, however, the atmosphere in the massive hall was unlike anything anyone had experienced before. Delegates from the most powerful species in the galaxy had gathered, their minds focused on one thing: the peace talks with Earth. The Council had invited humanity, the young species they had long underestimated, to join their ranks. They believed this would be an easy negotiation, a simple formality to absorb Earth into the fold of the Council, where Earth would learn to follow the rules, just like all the other species. But as the doors to the Council Hall opened and humanity's representative, Ambassador Sarah Evans, stepped inside, it became clear that Earth had other plans. The eyes of the galaxy's most powerful beings turned toward her. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all were waiting to hear what Earth would say. Sarah, with her sharp, confident gaze, stood before the table, facing the leaders of the galaxy's greatest powers. Her thoughts were clear. She was here not to beg for Earth's place among the stars, but to demand respect. Earth had grown tired of being treated as insignificant. The Council might hold power over many species, but they would not hold power over humanity. Not anymore. Sarah's voice echoed in the silent chamber as she began to speak. "We've heard your terms," she said, her tone calm but full of conviction. "But Earth rejects them. We do not accept your idea of peace." The words struck like lightning. For a moment, no one moved. The alien representatives blinked, unsure if they had heard correctly. The Council had expected Earth to humbly agree to their terms, not boldly refuse. The Council President, a towering alien from the Andromedan Empire, looked directly at Sarah, his face a mask of anger. "You cannot be serious," he growled. "The Galactic Council offers you peace, and you refuse it." Sarah held his gaze, unwavering. "Yes," she replied simply. "We refuse to be part of a system that would treat us as lesser beings. Earth will stand on its own or fall alone, but we will never bow to anyone." A ripple of shock spread through the chamber. Whispers erupted among the delegations, each one more incredulous than the last. No one had ever dared reject the Council's offers. The peace talks were a privilege that no species had ever turned down, let alone a relatively young and underdeveloped planet like Earth. For a moment, the room was filled with a tense silence, as if the very fabric of the galaxy was holding its breath. The Council President's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward, his voice booming with authority. "This is a grave mistake, Ambassador. The might of the Galactic Council stretches across the stars. If you reject this offer, your world will be isolated, cut off from the very allies you hope to gain. Do you think you can survive alone?" Sarah didn't flinch. "We've survived for centuries without your help. We'll survive for centuries more." The Council President's eyes narrowed. "Then prepare yourself for the consequences of your defiance. You will regret this decision, Earth." His words carried a weight of finality, but there was an undeniable hint of uncertainty in his voice. The leaders of the galaxy, the beings who had long seen themselves as the ruling powers, were not used to being challenged. And yet there was Earth, standing boldly, refusing to fall in line. As the meeting concluded, the air in the room felt thick with tension. The ambassadors returned to their stations, their minds racing with what had just transpired. Sarah could feel the eyes of the room on her as she walked out of the chamber. She knew the decision would have far-reaching consequences. The rejection of the Galactic Council's peace offer was not just a diplomatic maneuver. It was a declaration of war, whether the galaxy realized it or not. Earth had just become a target. Back on Earth, the news of the rejection spread like wildfire. In every corner of the planet, people watched in disbelief as their leaders declared their independence from the Council. Some cheered, filled with pride at Earth's bold stance. Others, however, feared what was to come. The Galactic Council was not a force to be trifled with. They controlled vast fleets, powerful weapons, and the might of countless species. Could Earth truly stand against such an enemy? As the days passed, the first signs of what was to come became clear. News reports filled with growing tension as alien forces began to mobilize. The galaxy had never seen humanity take such a stand before, and now they were afraid. The Council, desperate to maintain control, sent out emissaries to every corner of the galaxy, warning others not to side with Earth. They could not allow this rebellion to spread. If one species could defy the Council, others might follow. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos, and it was all because of Earth's refusal to bow to power. Sarah stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, watching the stars pass by as the fleet prepared for the unknown. They had rejected the Council's peace talks, but what did that really mean? There would be no turning back now. Earth had made its choice, and the galaxy would have to deal with the consequences. Commander Evans, the voice of her officer, interrupted her thoughts. We've received messages from several galactic factions. They want to know what Earth intends to do next. Sarah's gaze hardened. She wasn't sure yet what Earth's next move would be, but one thing was clear: they would not be silenced. Earth was no longer a pawn in the galactic game. They were players, and the universe would soon know that humans could not be ignored. The galaxy would shake. The consequences of this single bold decision had only just begun to unfold, and as Sarah looked toward the horizon, she knew that the fight for Earth's future, and perhaps the future of the galaxy, was just beginning. The news of humanity's rejection of the Galactic Council's offer spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It was hard for anyone to believe at first. The galaxy had known Earth for centuries, and even though humanity had made great strides in technology and exploration, they were still considered a young species in the grand scheme of galactic affairs. The Galactic Council had always been seen as the ultimate authority, a peaceful alliance of powerful species maintaining order. But Earth had shaken that belief to its very core. Across the galaxy, reactions were swift. Some species, shocked by humanity's bravery, began to question the power and control that the Galactic Council wielded. If Earth, the backward planet, could walk away from the talks, what did that say about the true nature of the Council's strength? There were whispers of revolt. Could others follow Earth's lead? Could the Council's rule be challenged? It was a dangerous question, and the galaxy's rulers didn't like it. Back on Earth, the tension was palpable. News stations ran nonstop coverage of the rejection, with debates taking place everywhere, on the streets, in government halls, and even in homes. Some citizens felt proud of their leaders for standing up to the so-called galactic overlords. After all, why should humanity submit to a group of species who had no understanding of Earth's culture, history, or values? Humanity had fought its way to the stars, and now it would carve its own destiny. But others, including some of the highest-ranking government officials, were more cautious. They feared that rejecting the Galactic Council could have disastrous consequences. The Council was no mere political entity. It was a military force, a coalition of species with unmatched power and advanced technology. They had the ability to wipe out any resistance with ease. Earth had no way of knowing what was coming next, and the consequences of this defiance could be catastrophic. Earth was isolated, unprepared, and vulnerable. Was this the beginning of humanity's greatest victory, or its downfall? Meanwhile, inside the Galactic Council's headquarters, the tension was just as high. The leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species met in emergency sessions, their discussions growing increasingly frantic. The Council president, still seething with anger, slammed his fist on the table. This cannot be allowed to continue. We cannot let a single species challenge our authority. If Earth is allowed to defy us without consequences, others will follow. The room fell silent as the various representatives exchanged uneasy glances. What had happened on Earth was unthinkable. The galaxy had operated under the assumption that the Council was the final word on peace and governance. If Earth, one of the youngest and most inexperienced species, had the audacity to reject the Council's offer, what else might be possible? And if Earth's bold move inspired other species to follow suit, the Council could be facing an insurrection of unimaginable scale. "We need to send a message," the president finally said, his voice low but filled with menace. We must show Earth and the rest of the galaxy that defying the Council has consequences. One of the alien leaders, a representative from the HFY, a species known for their ruthless military might, spoke up. I agree. Earth must be made an example of. A show of force is needed. The others nodded, reluctantly. The idea of punishing Earth was not a pleasant one, but it was clear that the Council had no other choice. The message must be sent loud and clear. The Council was not to be trifled with. As the Council debated its course of action, Earth's leaders were preparing for what was to come. Earth's fleet, a force far smaller and less advanced than the Council's combined military, was being mobilized in secret. The human military knew that they were outmatched in terms of technology and numbers, but they were determined to show the galaxy that they were not afraid. Sarah Evans, Earth's ambassador, found herself in a tense meeting with the military's top officials. The plans were still in their early stages, but the message was clear. Earth was preparing for what was coming. They could not stand idly by while the Council flexed its muscles. The time for diplomacy had passed. Do we really stand a chance? One of the generals asked, his voice thick with concern. The Council has fleets that could wipe us out in minutes. We're not prepared for war. Sarah's expression hardened. We may not have the technology or the numbers, but we have something the Council doesn't. Determination. The galaxy underestimates us, but that's exactly why we can't let this go. We've always been underestimated, but we've survived wars, famine, and disease. We've fought our way to the stars. We're not going to let anyone tell us that we don't belong. The room fell silent. There was a sense of understanding in the air now. Earth was standing at the edge of a precipice. The galaxy's most powerful forces were preparing to respond, and the fate of humanity would depend on their ability to hold firm. As the days passed, news of Earth's preparations began to leak across the galaxy. The alien factions, who had once dismissed humanity as weak and insignificant, now watched with wary eyes. Some began to rally their own forces in response to the threat Earth posed. Others, however, began to wonder if this could be the moment to break free from the Council's control themselves. If Earth could walk away from the talks, perhaps they could do the same. Could this be the beginning of something larger than anyone had anticipated? Back on Earth, there was no turning back. The humans had made their choice. The Defiance had already shaken the galaxy, but what came next would determine whether humanity would stand tall as a new power in the galaxy or fall in the face of overwhelming odds. As Sarah stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, looking out into the vast expanse of space, she knew the galaxy was watching. Humanity's bold move had sent a shockwave across the stars, but the real test was yet to come. Would Earth rise, or would it fall? The answers were waiting in the void, and soon they would come. As the days passed, the tension in the galaxy continued to rise. The shock of Earth's rejection still rippled through the farthest reaches of the known universe. What had started as a diplomatic refusal to the Galactic Council's peace talks had quickly turned into an intergalactic crisis. The Council's initial surprise was now replaced with anger and fear, and as Earth's military forces mobilized, the galaxy watched in anxious anticipation. The Council, never accustomed to being defied, had quickly moved to quash any idea that humanity's rejection of peace could inspire other rebellious species. Secret emissaries had been dispatched to every corner of the galaxy, ensuring that no faction would come to Earth's aid. We must isolate Earth, the Council President had declared, and we will do whatever is necessary to prevent this contagion from spreading. But as the Council acted to maintain order, something unexpected happened. Some species began to ask questions. The Vahari, a race known for their deep philosophical and spiritual understanding, had always maintained an air of detachment from the Council's policies. They viewed the ruling body as a necessary evil, but never fully embraced its rule. When news of Earth's rejection reached them, they took a different approach than the others. Rather than siding with the Council, they began quietly contacting Earth's leaders, offering support in the form of resources and intelligence. The Vahari knew that their efforts could provoke the wrath of the Council, but they also recognized an opportunity. If Earth truly stood against the galaxy's status quo, perhaps it could bring about a new era. Could humanity be the spark for a larger shift in the balance of power? On Earth, preparations for the worst were in full swing. The President of the United States, along with other world leaders, had convened a series of emergency meetings to discuss the future of humanity. With the full might of the Galactic Council now turning its gaze toward them, Earth was preparing for an unprecedented battle. No one knew for sure what the Council's response would be, but there were whispers that their military might could overwhelm Earth in a matter of days. In response, Earth's military leaders scrambled to develop new strategies, relying on both the technological advances they had made over the years and the hope that humanity's resilience could turn the tide. Earth had no intention of submitting. Their bold rejection had already made them a target, and they would fight to the bitter end if that's what it took. Ambassador Sarah Evans, who had sparked this entire crisis with her defiant rejection of the Council's peace talks, found herself at the center of it all. She was now the symbol of humanity's determination and defiance. Her every word, her every decision, was scrutinized by both Earth's leaders and the rest of the galaxy. Sarah had always known that this day might come, that humanity would someday have to choose between submission and survival. But she had never imagined the galaxy would react with such force. The pressure was immense, but Sarah refused to buckle. She knew that if humanity had any hope of surviving this, it would have to be united, strong, and resolute. The message was clear. Earth was a force to be reckoned with, and the Galactic Council would soon find out just how dangerous humanity could be. As Sarah sat in the Situation Room with Earth's top military leaders, the mood was grim but determined. "We know the Council will come," General Mitchell said, his voice low. "We've prepared for a limited strike, but if they come in full force, we won't stand a chance." Sarah, who had been watching the feed of the galaxy's military activity on the large screen in front of her, didn't flinch. "We can't afford to think like that. They underestimate us. We've survived much worse before." "You're right, but that was on our own terms. This is different. The Council won't hesitate to crush us." Sarah looked him in the eye. "Then it's up to us to show them that we don't fear them. Earth has made its stand. We've already shown them we won't be cowed. Now it's time for the universe to see what humanity can really do." The conversation shifted from fear to strategy. Earth's leadership was now taking a more proactive approach. They had already started building up their own fleet of ships, advanced weapons, and technologies that could give them a fighting chance against the might of the Galactic Council. In secret laboratories, scientists worked around the clock to reverse engineer alien technology they had captured over the years, using their ingenuity to create weapons and defensive systems that could level the playing field. While Earth prepared for war, the galaxy outside Earth's borders buzzed with rumors. There were growing factions of those who saw Earth's rejection as a sign of something larger, a symbol of resistance. Species who had once lived under the shadow of the Galactic Council began to voice their concerns more openly. Some began making quiet alliances with Earth, seeing an opportunity for a new balance of power. But the Council, despite their efforts to crush Earth's rebellion, was starting to show cracks. Their hold on the galaxy was slipping, even if they were too proud to admit it. On Earth, the people were both nervous and excited. For many, the idea of defying the Council was thrilling. Earth would no longer be a small pawn on the galactic stage. No longer would humans be bound by the whims of distant leaders they could never understand. They would fight for their place in the universe. But there was also fear. The Council was a force like no other, and Earth's rejection could be the beginning of an all-out war. Sarah stood on the balcony of her office, gazing out at the Earth below. The world was quieter than usual, the weight of the uncertainty hanging over everything. But there was a new energy now, a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had taken its first step towards something greater, something that could change the future of the galaxy. And as Sarah looked out into the stars, she knew that Earth was no longer just another planet in the galaxy. They were a force that would not be ignored. The shockwave had begun, and there was no turning back now. As the shockwaves of Earth's defiance reverberated across the galaxy, the Galactic Council grew more desperate. Earth, once considered a minor player in the vast cosmic order, had dared to challenge the very foundation of intergalactic governance. The galactic elite, accustomed to control and unquestioned dominance, found themselves scrambling to restore order and remind the universe of the Council's might. The Galactic Council's response, however, was far from the swift and overwhelming force they had hoped for. Instead, it was fragmented, tense, and uncertain. The Council's military leaders were now on high alert, but the gravity of the situation was slowly dawning on them. The rejection wasn't just a slap to their face, it was a direct challenge to their authority. And the ripple effect was spreading like wildfire. Some of the Council's members, species that had long been forced into submission, began to question whether the Galactic Council could continue to rule with an iron fist. The rejection of Earth was a rallying cry for these disenfranchised beings. Could this be the beginning of a galaxy-wide rebellion? Back on Earth, the atmosphere was one of simmering determination. The streets, though quiet in the wake of the initial shock, were now buzzing with an energy that hadn't been seen in decades. The entire world seemed to be waiting, watching, and bracing for what was to come. Across continents, new alliances were forming. Some nations pushed for diplomacy, calling for restraint and negotiation, while others, more fiercely independent, demanded full support for Earth's stand against the Council. But the majority were unified in one belief: Earth had made its mark. The time for bending the knee to other galactic powers was over. Earth's leadership, still in its early stages of planning, met with urgency. Ambassador Sarah Evans, having been thrust into the global spotlight, was now tasked with rallying the various factions within humanity. She knew that Earth's military might was nothing compared to the combined fleets of the Galactic Council, but she also knew that Earth had something far more powerful: unity, grit, and an unyielding will to survive. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. In the midst of all this chaos, Sarah found herself in an isolated, heavily guarded meeting with General Mitchell, the head of Earth's military forces. They had been through many rounds of tactical planning, but now it was time to make some final decisions. "The Council is coming, Sarah," General Mitchell said, staring at the holographic display in front of them. "We know they'll have their entire fleet ready for action. We've been preparing for the worst, but the truth is, we don't have enough strength to fight them directly. At best, we can hope for a stalemate." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She had seen the holographic war maps countless times. Earth's defenses were pitifully small compared to the power of the Council's military. The overwhelming number of battleships, heavy artillery, and advanced weaponry in the Council's possession could easily obliterate Earth's fleet in an instant. "Then we won't fight them head-on," she said with unwavering resolve. "We need to turn the tables on them. There's more at stake than just victory or defeat. If Earth has any chance of standing strong in the galaxy, we need to make the Council question their every move." Mitchell looked up, intrigued. "What are you suggesting?" "We need to strike fear into the heart of the Council, but not with brute force. We need to outsmart them," Sarah said, her tone measured. "We've got intelligence, we've got guerrilla tactics, and most importantly, we've got the element of surprise." The idea of using Earth's smaller, more nimble ships to outmaneuver and confuse the Council's massive fleets was a risk, but Sarah knew it was their best shot. The Council may have more ships, more resources, but humanity had the one thing the Council couldn't predict: unpredictability. "We'll hit them where they're least prepared, sabotage their communication networks, disrupt their supply lines," Sarah continued, outlining a plan that seemed more like a series of small, lightning-fast strikes than a full-fledged battle. "We don't need to win a full-scale war, but we need to make them question whether keeping us in line is worth the cost." General Mitchell paused for a moment, Considering the gravity of Sarah's words, it was a dangerous plan, and it would only work if humanity could get a foothold on the battlefield. The odds were slim, but Sarah was right. They didn't have the luxury of playing by the Council's rules. If humanity was to survive, they had to rewrite the rules entirely. As Sarah's plan began to take shape, the rest of Earth's military leaders started to fall in line. The strategy was clear: avoid open confrontation, focus on sabotage, and disrupt the Council's operations in any way possible. The stakes were high, but Earth's forces were beginning to see the wisdom in Sarah's approach. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the fact that Earth was capable of more than just brute force. But even as Earth's forces prepared for this new kind of war, the Council's response was slowly coming into focus. The Council's fleet, though massive, wasn't invincible. The Council's greatest weakness was its arrogance. They believed that no force, no species, could ever challenge their rule. Now, they were about to learn just how dangerous a species that had nothing left to lose could be. Across the galaxy, factions were beginning to form. Some species, fearing the might of the Galactic Council, rallied behind Earth, offering their support. These species, those who had long been oppressed by the Council, saw in Earth's defiance the chance to reclaim their independence. The Council could no longer pretend that it was the unchallenged ruler of the galaxy. Something was stirring, something that could tip the balance of power. Back on Earth, preparations continued. Earth's leadership knew that they had to be ready for the Council's retaliation. The countdown to war was drawing near, and every human on Earth understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. It wasn't just about Earth's future. It was about the future of the galaxy itself. As Sarah stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, staring out into the vastness of space, she knew that the next few weeks could determine everything. Earth had made its choice, and the galaxy was now on the brink of war. With every passing moment, the fate of humanity and the entire galaxy hung in the balance. As the days continued to tick by, the tension in the galaxy reached a boiling point. The Galactic Council, once a seemingly untouchable force, found itself scrambling to regain control over the situation it had never anticipated. Earth's rejection had not only sent shockwaves across the stars, but had ignited a spark of defiance among countless other species who had long been oppressed or ignored by the Council. While the political fallout from Earth's bold decision was still unfolding, the Council's military forces were preparing for a swift retaliation. Yet, what they didn't realize was that Earth wasn't just preparing for war, it was preparing to change the entire galaxy. Ambassador Sarah Evans, the face of Earth's defiance, was more than just a symbol now. She had become a leader, a strategist, and a beacon of hope for those who had felt the weight of the Council's tyranny. The weight of responsibility bore heavily on her shoulders, but she had long known that this moment would come. Humanity's rise was inevitable, and now it was time to prove that Earth was a force that could not be crushed. In a high-security facility, deep underground, Sarah sat at the helm of a large conference table, surrounded by Earth's most brilliant minds. Military strategists, diplomats, scientists, and engineers. The room was filled with a sense of urgency, but also an air of quiet determination. The discussions had reached a fever pitch, with each person contributing their ideas for how Earth could push back against the looming threat of the Galactic Council. "We need to show the Council that we are not afraid," General Mitchell said, his voice firm. "But more than that, we need to show them that we can outthink them. If we go to war head-to-head, we will lose. We can't afford that. We need precision, we need speed, and we need to hit them where it hurts most." Sarah nodded slowly, considering his words. The Council has made one fatal mistake. They've underestimated humanity. They think we're weak. That's the advantage we have. We may not have the numbers, but we have the ingenuity. And the galaxy still doesn't know what Earth is truly capable of. "We've been developing new weapons," said Dr. Aaron Lee, an expert in advanced energy systems. Some of these technologies could give us the edge we need, but time is running out. Sarah stood up, her gaze fixed on the screen displaying the shifting positions of the Council's fleet. We won't give them time to regroup. We hit them fast, we hit them hard, and we keep them off balance. We're going to strike at their supply lines, cut off their reinforcements, and disable their communication networks. We're going to take out their ability to fight this war before it even begins. General Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting a guerrilla-style war? Ambushes? Sabotage? Sarah looked at him, her eyes steely with determination. Exactly. The Council is used to having all the power, all the resources, but they haven't fought a war against a species that has nothing left to lose. We will become their worst nightmare. The plan was bold, risky, and nearly impossible to execute, but there was no other choice. Earth's survival depended on it. With the help of alien allies who had quietly offered their support, Earth's forces began preparing for the most unconventional and audacious military campaign in history. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Galactic Council was still reeling from Earth's rejection. Meetings were held in secrecy, with members of the Council debating the best course of action. The Council President, Elithar, a towering figure from the warlike Nyrek species, had initially called for an immediate military response. But now, doubt had crept into his mind. Earth was no longer just a nuisance to be brushed aside. They had sparked something, a chain reaction that was spreading through the galaxy. We cannot let this go unpunished, Elithar growled, his eyes flashing with anger. If we do not crush this rebellion now, we risk losing control of the entire galaxy. There is a greater risk in retaliation, argued Janthal, a diplomatic representative from the peaceful Yothar species. If we strike Earth too forcefully, we may trigger a galaxy-wide uprising. We can't afford to alienate our allies. Elithar's fist slammed against the table, causing the other members of the Council to flinch. The galaxy belongs to us. This rebellion must be stamped out, or it will grow. Earth's rejection is a symbol, one that can spread if we allow it. We must act, and we must act decisively. But as the Council's deliberations continued, something unexpected was happening behind the scenes. A quiet movement was gaining strength. The species that had long been oppressed, ignored, or mistreated by the Council were beginning to rise. The Noral, a technologically advanced race, once enslaved by the Council, reached out to Earth with an offer of support. The Vahari, too, sent an encrypted message to Sarah Evans, pledging their assistance. These alliances, once considered impossible, were now becoming a reality. The more the Council pressed for war, the more Earth's cause gained momentum. Sarah knew that Earth was no longer alone. The galaxy was beginning to fracture, and the Council's monopoly on power was slipping away. The first of Earth's guerrilla forces, equipped with advanced technology and strategic brilliance, made their first move. Small, tactical strikes were launched against Council supply lines, disrupting the flow of resources to their fleets. Sabotage missions were carried out across key planets, sending shockwaves through the galactic network. The Council's military was stretched thin, and their communications were fractured, making it harder for them to coordinate their efforts. But Earth's victories were not without consequence. The Council's retaliation came quickly. They unleashed their most powerful fleets upon Earth's allies, decimating several outer colonies in an effort to send a warning. The attacks were brutal, and countless innocent lives were lost. But this only fueled humanity's resolve. If the Council thought they could intimidate Earth with destruction, they were sorely mistaken. Earth was more than capable of fighting back. Ambassador Evans stood on the balcony of the Earth Command Center, overlooking the bustling preparation area. The sky above was clouded with the remnants of explosions from the ongoing space skirmishes. It was a somber sight, but Sarah knew that Earth had already crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. There was no going back now. "We've lit the fuse," she whispered to herself. "Now we wait for the explosion." As Earth's forces braced for the inevitable full-scale assault from the Council, they knew one thing. This was more than just a war for survival. This was a fight for freedom, for identity, and for the very future of the galaxy. The fate of the universe rested on the shoulders of those who had refused to bow to the Council's will. The war that had begun with a single act of defiance was now fully underway, and the galaxy trembled in its wake. Earth's unexpected rejection of the Galactic Council's peace talks had set off a chain reaction that was quickly spiraling out of control. While the Galactic Council attempted to regroup and reassess, Earth's forces, bolstered by alliances with once oppressed species, were executing their strategy with increasing effectiveness. The Council, realizing they had underestimated humanity, was desperate to restore their broken control. Across the stars, skirmishes erupted as Earth's fleets engaged the Council's forces with unprecedented audacity. The guerrilla tactics that had once seemed like a last-ditch effort were now proving to be far more successful than anyone had imagined. Earth's ships, smaller and more maneuverable, were able to strike quickly and vanish into the vastness of space before the Council's massive fleets could respond. Sabotage missions crippled supply lines, disabled communication arrays, and wreaked havoc on key infrastructure, leaving the Council scrambling for solutions. General Mitchell watched the progress of the campaign from Earth's War Command Center, his expression hardening as he saw the latest reports. "We've hit them hard, but we can't slow down," he said. "If they catch up to us, we'll lose everything." Sarah Evans stood beside him, looking out at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Council was deploying more ships, but they were scattered, reacting instead of acting with the precision and dominance they once wielded. They were beginning to look desperate. "We have to keep the pressure on," Sarah said quietly, her voice steady despite the weight of the decisions they were making. "But we have to be smarter. We can't let them get a foothold." Mitchell nodded, turning to face the screen where a new report flashed across. The Noral fleet just intercepted another Council convoy. This time they're signaling to the outer colonies. This could be our chance to break the Council's grip. Sarah's gaze sharpened. "Send word to the Vahari. If we can intercept their reinforcements and cut off their command centers in the outer regions, we'll force them to divide their forces. The last thing they want is to fight a war on multiple fronts." General Mitchell's eyes flicked to the map, the possibilities running through his mind. It was a dangerous move, but it could shift the balance. "You want to make them spread too thin to respond effectively." "That's exactly it," Sarah said. "We need them to be too stretched out to organize. If we can divide their attention and resources, we'll break their unity." As the battle strategies were formulated, the Council was beginning to experience cracks in its leadership. Elithar, the Council president, was growing impatient. The Nyrek general had never been one to tolerate failure. His once unshakable confidence had begun to waver as Earth's surprise victories mounted. "We cannot allow this to continue. Earth is playing us for fools," Elithar thundered during an emergency council meeting. His voice echoed in the chamber, shaking the other members from their composure. Janthal, the Yothar diplomat, tried to intervene. "We cannot strike blindly, Elithar. Our previous actions are already pushing other species to question our authority. If we retaliate too harshly, we risk igniting the galactic war." "Then let it be war," Elithar growled. "Earth has made their stand. They wish for rebellion, and rebellion they shall have." Despite Janthal's attempts to sway the Council's decision, Elithar was resolute. A decision was made. They would marshal the full power of the Council's fleets and launch a direct assault on Earth, intending to crush any notion of rebellion once and for all. In the weeks that followed, as the tension reached its peak, Earth's leadership was preparing for the worst. They knew the Council would respond with overwhelming force, but they were determined not to give up. It was now or never. Meanwhile, the galaxy's other species, those who had been oppressed, silenced, or forgotten by the Galactic Council, watched with a mix of awe and disbelief. They were witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history, one where the underdog species, led by the audacious humans, were rewriting the rules of intergalactic politics. Among those watching was Kalora, a leader from the once subjugated Xandor species. She had spent her entire life under the boot of the Council, but now, as Earth's rebellion gathered strength, she saw an opportunity to change everything. If Earth succeeds, she said to her people, we will no longer be bound by the Council's chains. They are weakening, and we must stand with them now, before they fall. Her words echoed across the Xandor homeworld, sparking a movement that would eventually rally thousands of species to Earth's side. No longer would they live in fear of the Council's iron fist. Earth's defiance had given them hope. And now, they too were ready to take up arms. Back on Earth, Sarah Evans was preparing for what would likely be the final confrontation. Earth's forces had taken every possible measure to fortify their defenses, but they knew that nothing would be enough to withstand the full might of the Council's wrath. Earth was no longer just fighting for its survival, it was fighting for its future, and for the future of the galaxy. The fleets are on their way, General Mitchell said grimly, reviewing the incoming intelligence reports. We've got one shot at this. If we can hold them off just long enough, the outer colonies can join the fight, and the Council's hold on this galaxy will crumble. Sarah clenched her fists, her face hardening with resolve. Then we fight, Mitchell. We fight, and we win. In the heart of Earth's capital, as the stars above darkened with the shadow of war, the people of Earth gathered in solidarity. The streets, once filled with uncertainty, now buzzed with a sense of unity. People of all nations, backgrounds, and beliefs had come together, standing as one for the first time in human history. The galaxy was watching. The Galactic Council was preparing for its final assault, and Earth, despite the overwhelming odds, stood tall. Their message was clear. Humanity would no longer be subjugated. The galaxy had underestimated them once. They would never make that mistake again. As Sarah Evans stood on the balcony, overlooking the streets filled with citizens ready to face whatever came next, she felt an overwhelming surge of pride. The war was not over, but the first victory had already been won. Humanity had made its stand, and no force in the galaxy could ever erase it. The final battle was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again.